I was not able to walk at 28,000 feet above sea level. My health was going down real fast, and in that moment I had realized that I was not gonna make it back. All I was asking from the universe was that if you are hearing me, if you are listening to me, just give me 30 seconds with my loved ones.
The time has come. Everything I've worked towards since the last 9 years boils down to this one night. So how did the dream of climbing Everest start? Well, I remember when I was 15 years of age, I went for a small hike to a peak called Mount Kalsubai in Maharashtra. It's the highest peak of our state. And I saw the sun rising from the summit. And I had never seen anything more beautiful than that. And that was my time when I thought, like if the sunrise from this small hill is so beautiful, how would the sunrise look from the highest peak in the world? And as a stupid 15-year-old, kahin na kahin I promised myself that I want to see the sunrise from the highest peak in the world in this lifetime, and that's when the seeds of climbing Everest was sown into my mind. Then eventually I started going for these small treks in the Sahyadri ranges, and I met a few experts of our field in those treks. I used to always speak to them that, oh, I want to climb Everest and this is my life's dream and this and that. So one of those guys, he sat me down and he told me that, Parth, if you seriously want to do mountaineering, you need to do the mountaineering courses in India to learn the ABCD of mountaineering. In 2016, I went for my basic mountaineering course in Nehru Institute of Mountaineering. It is in Uttarkashi. In this course, I met one instructor who had actually climbed Everest before. And this was the first time I was actually meeting someone who had climbed Everest. And I used to just run behind him asking all sorts of questions about Everest and mountaineering and fitness and everything. There are like 3 pillars that one needs to focus on in order to climb Everest. One is the mountaineering experience, other is the physical fitness part, and the third one is the fundraising part. So keeping these guidelines in mind, I went about climbing a few 6,000 meter mountains in the Indian Himalayas, in order to gain the valuable experience needed for Everest. And these various peaks that I climbed, they gave me enough experience and understanding of what mountaineering is all about. In August 2017, I went for my advanced mountaineering course in Himalayan Mountaineering Institute. It's in Darjeeling. And जब मैं वहाँ से आया वापस, after I came back from the course, I thought कि okay, now I think I should give myself a realistic target of when I want to climb Everest. I thought to myself that I need at least 2 years to prepare my body and my mind for the challenges that Everest is going to throw at me. And obviously, I'll need that much time to raise the funds. So they say that to go to the top of the world, you need to build a top of the world mind and a top of the world body. And the best training for mountaineering is to actually be in the mountains. Keeping this in mind, I moved to the mountains. I rented out a small flat in a nearby village in the Sahyadris called Bhivpuri. It's near Karjat. I isolated myself from the world completely. I used to stay there all by myself. Each and every second of the day was invested in building myself physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually up to a point that I am ready for Everest. My day used to start at around 3:30 in the morning with some pranayam, some breathing exercises and some meditation, because mountaineering is more of a mind game than it is physical. And the bigger Everest is within us, which is here. It is a mountain made of all the negative things like fear, jealousy and ego and all sorts of excuses that we give ourselves. And it is very important to first climb the Everest within. Only then you'll be able to climb the Everest outside. And then my daily routine used to be around 6 to 7 hours of daily training, which included a lot of hiking, a lot of trail running, a lot of CrossFit sessions in the evening for my muscle strengthening part. And within 2 years I had a body and a mind which was ready for Everest. And parallelly, a very important aspect of mountaineering was also going on, which was the fundraising part. The question that people ask me the most is, how did you raise the funds? Obviously I didn't have 35-40 lakh rupees with me, but what I had was the will to raise the funds no matter what. So I started approaching the corporate world, the government people, and the response from there was very unexpected, very negative. I spoke to around 150 companies in a span of 2 years and I didn't get a single rupee from there. I spoke to the state government, the central government, I got no support at all. Parallelly, my friend was telling me to start crowdfunding. At that point, I didn't even know what crowdfunding was. I went on Google and then I got to know, oh, crowdfunding is basically asking for contributions from people you know. I was someone who never ever borrowed even 5 rupees from someone, and it was a very big no to ask money from anyone. But I told myself that Parth, your dream of climbing Everest is much more bigger than your ego. Okay, so keep the ego aside and just go for it. You have nothing to lose. I started asking for contributions from people, and to my surprise, like, people actually started contributing. I didn't expect that they would give me their hard earned money without any expectation in return. But these were the people who had actually seen my obsession with Everest, who had seen how crazily I am training for this mountain, and they were like, okay, this is what we can give, now just go and climb that damn mountain and move on with your life. And yeah, like, very strangely, I was able to raise around 50% amount from crowdfunding. Side mein my father was seeing that the whole world is contributing, and even I'll have to give something to this stupid kid. So from my saving and my father's saving, I was like, we added another 30% of the amount, and in the last 1 month I was still falling short of 20% of the amount, and then we had to take a loan around 10 to 12 lakh rupees, which I am repaying right now. The last 1 week was spent just packing and shopping for Everest, because every little thing needs to be in place. The success and failure will depend on the little things in your in your equipment list. So I left Mumbai for my expedition on the 8th of April. I flew to Kathmandu from here. Everest can be climbed from two sides. One is the Nepal side, the traditional Nepalese route where Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay first climbed Everest, which is used by 95% of the mountaineers right now. And the other route is from the Chinese side of the mountain. Now, all of you by now might have heard that news of overcrowding on Everest. So this thing you guys heard this year because it went viral, but this is happening since the last 10 years, and I didn't want to get stuck in traffic and lose my fingers and toes, or even worse, death. And only 5% climbers go from the Chinese side, and I chose to go from the Chinese side. Now the Chinese side of the route, which is the northeast ridge route, now that route is much more colder, much more windier, much more challenging to climb than the Nepalese side of the mountain. Especially the summit night is very technical, it is very long, and it is extremely difficult. But I knew that with the years of training, the years of mountaineering experience I had, I felt ready from within. We left Kathmandu for our Everest base camp journey on the 11th of April. We have started our journey towards the Everest base camp in China, and today is day 1, and it should take us around 5 days to get to base camp. So now on the Chinese side of the mountain, you can actually drive up to base camp. Once you enter into China, into Tibet, the roads are spectacular. Like, the roads are so well made and maintained that you can drive up to 100 kilometers per hour in the mountain roads. Like it was unimaginable, and the kind of beauty, the kind of landscape which the route had was just too good to be true. So we climbed a very high altitude pass at around 16,000 feet before reaching the Everest base camp, and suddenly we were hit with the views of Everest right in front of us.
That is Mount Everest. That is Makalu. Behind that is Mount Lhotse. That is Mount Everest. And Mount Cho Oyu. What a view.
And this was the first time I was ever seeing Everest in my life. It was 15th of April. 15th of April happens to be my birthday. And this is the first time in my life I ever saw Everest, and I was just blown away by the majestic north face of Everest. This was the mountain which had kept me awake at nights, which was the reason for so many of my sleepless nights. The mountain that had been an obsession since the last 9 years, I was finally seeing it in front of me, and I could have never asked for a better birthday gift. And this one thought came into my mind कि this mountain looks much more bigger than I ever expected it to be than it looked in pictures and videos. But yes, now I was here and it was game time. We reached the Everest base camp at 17,200 feet on 15th of April. This base camp was now gonna be our home for the next 1.5 months. I thought I'll show you guys around the life at base camp. So behind me you can see Everest. Heavy jet stream winds are blasting off the face, and this side all these small dome tents are where we sleep, the clients, and I'll show you my tent. That's the shower tent which we hardly use. This right here is my tent. It's a bit unorganized, but I know where everything is. This is the main tent for us. So this is our dining tent. This is where we hang out most of the times, and all our food and everybody is here. Hello. And this is where we wash our hands, and this is where Catherine sits. Hello. And this is our kitchen tent. This is where the magic happens. By Tendi Dai, हमारे अन्नपूर्णा है ये. अन्नपूर्णा श्योर. कुछ ना कुछ स्वादिष्ट खाना यहाँ बनते रहता है. बनता है. यहाँ पे हमारे जरूरत पड़ रहा है ना.
Washing machine.
Washing machine. Yes. Washing machine at 17,000 feet. Yeah. Today is a very calm day. It's not windy, surprisingly, at base camp today. And this is the rest of the base camp there. It's a small base camp. On 21st April, we had our puja ceremony. The puja is conducted because the Sherpa people believe that we need to ask permissions from the mountain gods for a safe passage up and down the mountain. And without doing the puja ceremony, it is not a good thing to start with the expedition. So we had our puja ceremony. Good luck, Dai. Good luck. Good luck, Dai. Good luck. Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck, man.
Good luck, Father.
Good luck. Good luck, man. Good luck. Good luck, Dai.
Thank you. Good luck to you.
And like in India, किसी भी पूजा के बाद we eat something sweet for prasad, like God's food. the Shepa people, they have beer as prasad, they have rum as prasad, and we had a crazy party that afternoon. We all got completely wasted. And this was the last party before things get real. Puja ceremony marks the official beginning of the expedition. A mountain as big as Everest, as high as Everest, cannot be climbed in one go like we imagine Camp 1, Camp 2, Camp 3, Camp 4 summit. No, it is not like that. Because your bodies are not acclimatized to the low oxygen levels. Now, to get our bodies used to that altitude, we follow a procedure called rotations, in which we leave the base camp, we go to the advanced base camp, we spend the night, and we come back to base camp, rest for a few days, recover, eat, drink, sleep well, and again go back to advanced base camp, go up to Camp 1, back to advanced base camp, and again back to base camp. And the whole idea behind this is you introduce your body slowly to the higher altitudes, so it can adjust without it going in a complete state of shock. Fortunately for us, we planned our rotations in such a way that once we leave the base camp, we'll do only one rotation simultaneously and reach altitude of Camp 1, spend the night and come back. We left the base camp on 22nd of April for our rotations. We went up to the middle camp.
So we are here at intermediate camp, 5,900 meters, I guess. 800, yeah. So the first time around, it was the end part of it was a bit of a struggle, but yeah, slow and steady. This is our camp. Small little place. This is our dining. This is our kitchen.
Between the middle camp and the advanced base camp, we enter into this area called the Miracle Highway.
So we've entered the 6,000 meter mark, and surprising hard work. You can see the beautiful Miracle Highway of the Rongbuk Glacier around us, and we have to go behind this peak right here. Yeah, let's keep walking. Bistare. I'm humming Madai.
Hi, थक गया.
आप तक गया. लो चल के मेरे साथ.
Advanced Base Camp is situated at around 21,000 feet. For our first rotation, we spent a few nights at the Advanced Base Camp, and then we went towards the Camp 1. Between Advanced Base Camp and Camp 1 comes a very huge 1,000 feet long ice wall called the North Col Wall. It's made of full blue ice and it is extremely difficult to climb. After a very tiring climb, we finally reached the Camp 1 above the North Col Wall.
Hello everyone. So after बहुत ज़्यादा हिम्मत करने के बाद आवाज़ निकल रही है बाहर अभी. We just got here for our first rotation on 7,100 meters on the Camp 1, which is on the North Col of Mount Everest. So you can see this. This is our small tent, small camp rather, and here is Kuntal Dai. Sorry, forgive my. He came 2 hours, 3 hours earlier than me. And Sunurbu Dai, thank you for sticking behind me. Catherine, always smiling, always energetic. How are you feeling?
Oh, very well. Thanks a lot.
Yeah?
Oh, it's fantastic.
It is. Madai, क्या कर रहे हो आप?
नमस्ते.
क्या चल रहा है?
हाँ, अभी पानी बना रहा हूँ. तो पानी बनने के बाद फिर हम और सारो कुकिंग कर सकते हैं.
जी.
तो सबसे पहले तो हम पानी बनाना है, तो पानी बना रहा हूँ अभी.
ओके.
हाँ.
थैंक यू दाई. day. Can't miss all this. After I got here, I was in रोने लगा था. What an overwhelming feeling this was. I always saw this place in pictures and videos and in documentaries. How did I get it up here? I don't know. But yeah, it's nice. That snow ridge is the route up to Everest. Camp 2, Camp 3. On the summit night, catch the ridge. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, summit slope, and hopefully summit.
That night at Camp 1, something really strange happened. You guys remember in the Indian eastern side there was a cyclone called Fani in the May first week. So the effects of it was felt even up on Everest. Me and my partner Kuntal, we are sleeping in the tent, and every 15-20 minutes we are feeling a gust of whirlpool wind starting and going away. For 15-20 seconds it used to come and go away.
It's 3 in the night and the weather is only getting bad. Wind. I don't know how this plastic thing is holding up. Oh, and it's practically raining and snowing inside the tent. We can see it in the video.
Now with each whirlpool the winds started getting fast. I said to Kuntal that if the winds start getting this fast, the tent would blow off and we would be homeless at 23,000 feet. And at around 3:25, finally I was able to sleep somehow, and and suddenly Kuntal wakes me up from my sleeping bag, and as soon as I bring my face outside the sleeping bag, the whole gust of wind went on my face, and I realized the tent has been blown off. There is no shelter left, and all the equipment and the small luggage that we had removed from the bag was flying off. So we collected the equipment and put it in the bag. He asked us to put our bags and everything in their tent. Luckily their tent was somehow stable, it survived that whirlpool, and we went inside their tent, and it was me, Kuntal, Mingma Dai and my Sherpa, Funaru Sherpa. We were 4 of us in one tent, and all throughout the night we were holding the tent like this from all the 4 corners because this was the only piece of shelter we had. If this went off, if this broke off, we would be seriously screwed at that altitude. After the rotation, we reached the base camp on around 5th of May, and now we had to wait for a good weather window. If someone asks me what was the most difficult part throughout the whole expedition, it was not the climbing, it was this waiting period, because now you are left all by yourself to your mind. It is just you and your mind, and your mind starts working against you in ways you cannot imagine, because you don't know when the weather window will come, you don't know if it will come.
This is the most difficult part of the expedition, having to just wait, speculate, think, overthink, re-overthink. We don't see any weather windows in the coming future, and everything is very uncertain right now. Heavy jet stream winds have been constantly blowing off the Everest summit, and it just does not seem to get better.
What if the weather window does not come? What if this happens? What if that happens? It just amplifies 1,000-fold every second in your mind. And in these times it is extremely important to remain focused, because once your focus wavers off, the expedition is practically over for you.
So it's very difficult to be patient and know when it is your time to move. Until then, this is what life at base camp is.
Usually the weather window comes around 15th-16th of May, ideally. But we were seeing forecasts up to 20th May, 21st May. We could see nothing. The winds were just as ferocious up there. Finally, on 15th of May, we got a forecast saying that, oh, on 23rd May, the winds might slow down, the weather might clear up. Might. That might is a big gamble up there. Like, it can literally, that might can literally kill you up there.
I've waited too long for this, and everything I've done, all the hard work, everything boils down to the coming week. What I do in the coming week, yeah, that's what matters. Very excited, very nervous, but only pays up.
So keeping 23rd May 2019 as our summit date in mind, we left the base camp now for the summit push on 18th of May 2019. We went up to advanced base camp, we spent a night.
So today is 20th of May and we are all geared up for the summit. We are at ABC right now. If all goes well, in the next 3 days, we'll be on the top of the world.
And then up to Camp 1 the other night, we spent a night there. From Camp 1 we start using the supplementary oxygen at 23,000 feet and above, because now it gets extremely difficult to function without supplementary oxygen. The route between Camp 1 and Camp 2 is pretty straightforward.
What do I even say? We've reached Camp 2 at 7,700 meters. Yeah, 7,700 meters, the highest point for me so far. And the walk was not that tiring. The snow ridge was pretty nice once I got used to a good pace. And tomorrow we go to 8,300 meters, Camp 3, the highest camp in the whole world. Now you have to remove the sleeping bag, wear the dry socks. Such a big task, huh? At this altitude. Joote kholte. But it's nice. This is what I wanted to do always. Q. Why do we do this?
Route between Camp 2 and Camp 3 was probably the most challenging route personally for me because it was full of rock and ice, like 20% ice and 80% rock. It is so steep that no snow stays on the slopes, it just all falls off. The only thing that remains are the rocks, the loose rocks. And with the crampons that you wear under your feet, it is extremely difficult to walk on those loose rocks. Between Camp 2 and Camp 3 we enter the 8,000 meter mark, which is the death zone. There's only 33% oxygen saturation in the atmosphere at that altitude, and taking each step gets increasingly difficult. The rhythm now gets up to 3 steps and 10 breaths. 3 steps, stop, and 10 breaths. And this became the rhythm for the entire duration now.
So we've reached Camp 3, 8,300 meters. That means we've entered the 8,000 meter marks. The journey up to the Camp 3 was much more difficult than I ever expected it to be. But now I'm here, feeling strong from within, from the mind. And we have the best of people with us. Kuntal Dai, Mingma Dai here, and Funurbu Dai, who is outside somewhere. So yes, we'll spend a few hours here resting, rehydrating, eating, and then march towards the top of the world. Yes, the time has come. Everything I've worked towards since the last 9 years boils down to this one night. It's a very overwhelming feeling to think that I'm here finally somehow against all odds. Yeah.
Paneer, yes.
Matar paneer at 8,300 meters, huh? Not bad. Matar paneer and roti. सही है. गरम करके खाएंगे सब लोग मिलके.
I remember this incident very vividly in my mind. My Sherpa said just upon reaching Camp 3 that I need to change into my summit socks to keep my feet warm now. And I sat down to remove my shoes, and it took me 15 to 20 minutes to just remove my shoes. Like, I used to open a lace and I used to be just out of breath. I used to remove the zipper, I used to be just again out of breath. In the last 2 years, whenever I used to go for my training or for my fundraising meetings, when things used to not work out in my favor, there was this one song that I used to listen to, Fix You by Coldplay, and I always used to imagine that when at Camp 3, while I was getting ready to leave for the summit push, I will listen to this one song. And while I was getting ready, I played that song, and that moment was unreal for me. Like, against all odds, I was finally there, about to leave for the greatest night of my life.
This is an unreal moment for me. Ever since I started dreaming about Everest, I promised myself, when at Camp 3, when leaving for the summit, when getting ready, I listened to this one song, and here I am. Here it is. Dreams do come true. Those who are very close to me, you know how much this moment means to me. It's time. It's time to leave for the highest peak in the world.
I walked throughout the night at a very good pace, and at around 4:45 in the morning, I reached this final slope before the summit of Everest. That is the top of the world. And now the morning light had just started to come from the eastern side, and I could see the prayer flags fluttering on the summit, and I just got down on my knees and started crying like a baby. And the whole journey of the last 9 years started literally flashing back in front of me, and I knew that these last 50 feet won't stop me from reaching the summit of Everest, the top of the world. And I just started weeping there. My Sherpa came behind me and he slapped on my head and he was like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, my dream came true and this and that. I was just blabbering. He was like, "You are not on the summit yet, just keep on walking, yeah." And I was like, yes. The last 50 feet up to the summit, every step I remember it, and I just could not stop crying. The tears that were coming out of my eyes were getting frozen on my cheeks because it was around -40, -45 degrees outside. And I took the final steps towards the top of the world, and because I was ahead of everyone, there was nobody on the top, and I just finished the last slope, reached the summit, and just fell and just lied. I just lay down on the summit completely, just weeping and crying. And I saw a small Buddha statue of, I guess, this size up there. And I just went up to that statue. I put my head on the statue, and I thanked the mountain gods that thank you for opening your gates for me, and thank you for giving me such a wonderful experience. And yes, when I opened my eyes, I saw the view that I wanted to see since the last 9 years. A view that I had only seen in pictures and videos and documentaries and in videos like these. I sat down on the summit next to the Buddha statue. I had the whole top of the world to myself. Universe ka timing dekho. Just on the eastern side right now, when I saw behind Kanchenjunga, I saw the sun rising, and this thought came into my mind that as a stupid 15-year-old, I had thought कि मुझे इस world की highest peak से sunrise देखना है. And 9 years later, against all odds, I was standing on the top of the world, looking down at the sun, watching that very sunrise, and I realized the power of a dream that morning. when I was on the summit, my Sherpa got this message on his walkie-talkie that a huge storm is coming in within the next 3.5-4 hours, and that everyone needs to turn around wherever they are. So we started rushing down quickly, and little did I know that my life is gonna completely change on the way down. We caught the northeast ridge and we started to go down. I think within the next half an hour, something really strange started happening to me. I was feeling extremely weak with each step. The energy was being drained too fast, and something was like really wrong with me. My Sherpa was a little behind me, around 5 minutes behind me. There came a point I was not able to walk. I just sat down and I was trying to get up. I didn't have enough energy to even stand up. And I knew if you can't walk, you are going to die. There is nobody who is going to come and rescue you. There is a storm coming in. Nobody is that stupid. I saw a place on the side where I could go and lay flat. I started crawling towards that place, having accepted this outcome that I am going to die within the next 15-20 minutes. And you know, in the 5 minutes that I faced death, in the 5 minutes that when I had accepted that I was going to die at 28,000 feet, the only thought which came into my mind was, I was speaking out loud that God, universe, whatever you want to call it, if you are out there, if you are listening to me, just give me 30 seconds with my family, with my mom, my dad, and all that I could not say to them in the last 24 years, I can say to them in the 30 seconds that you give me. And I felt so stupid having wasted 24 years and just begging for 30 seconds. But time gone is gone, chance gone is gone, and I started crawling towards that flat space. And my Sherpa saw me from a distance and he came running to me. he was like, why are you crawling? Why are you not walking? I was like, Dai, I cannot walk. I'm going to die. Please just leave me and go. Don't risk your life for me. He removed his gloves in a very dramatic way. He just slapped me on my face like, fuck. And the blood flow brought the senses back. And he checked my oxygen cylinder. The oxygen cylinder was empty, and this is the reason why I was feeling so hypoxic and so weak. Nothing was wrong with me. He gave me his oxygen on full flow and he changed my oxygen cylinder. I somehow recovered out of it. And you know, it's such a simple thing that you have to check your oxygen cylinder whether it's empty or not, and I was checking it from the start until the very end. But at this altitude, your mind just stops working, and that's when the experience and the help of a Sherpa climbing guide comes in, and I owe my life to him. Without him, I would not be sitting here talking to you guys. And then an hour later, that storm which was gonna come, it finally hit us. It was, I guess, around 50 to 60 kilometers per hour wind, and it was complete whiteout. We could not see anything. In this whole process, my sunglasses got frozen from within and I could not see anything. Obviously, you have to see where you're stepping, right? So I put my sunglasses up. Now I knew what that meant. Certain snow blindness. So to save one eye, I consciously chose to close my right eye like this and just walk with one eye. Now, I don't know how many of you must have noticed this. When you're walking with just one eye, you don't know what is up, what is down. There's no three-dimensional view. Now imagine climbing down at 27,000 feet with one eye. And that was something I fell too many times, more than I can remember. My down suit got torn from everywhere, and I got hurt here, on my knee, on my back, everywhere. But somehow I made it to Camp 3. at around 2 in the afternoon. And then in the middle of this storm, I somehow managed to reach Camp 3 crawling. I was extremely exhausted, dehydrated, and sleep deprived, food deprived. I was just knackered out of my mind. And my like when I entered the tent, I realized that I'm completely blind from my left eye. Like I have no vision left here, and it was hurting so bad. And then I was just lay down in my sleeping bag, and my Sherpa told me that, oh Parth, you need to go down to at least Camp 2 because we don't have enough oxygen left. I was like, Dai, I don't have that energy left in me right now. And he was like, Parth, you have two options. Either you sleep here for the night, your oxygen will run out and you will die, or you gather up the courage and go down and go home. When these are the only two options, you obviously choose the number 2. I left the Camp 3 and I just started to go down somehow, and as fast as I could. It took me around another 4.5 to 5 hours to reach Camp 2. I don't know how I managed that stretch with one eye. We slept there for the night, and the next day we went down to Advanced Base Camp and then on to Base Camp.
So we just unclipped the last anchor. That means we are practically down to safety. And yeah, ABC Advanced Base Camp is just 30-35 minutes away. What a journey it has been. Yeah, tomorrow we go back to base camp and then from there home. Yeah, I like the last 3-4 days has been like a dream come true. Still I cannot believe where I was yesterday morning. Like it's gonna take me some time to digest. But we are safe and sound, so that's the best thing.
The real ecstasy of having stood on the top of the world hit me as soon as I reached the base camp, because when you reach the summit, that's only the 50% mark. 85% mountaineering deaths happen on the way down, so there was no reason to celebrate until you reach the base camp. And once we reached the base camp, we partied like it was the last day on the planet, and it was a crazy night, and we were back down safely.
People often ask me what was the best part, the best moment of the whole expedition, and they expect my answer to be standing on the top of the world and this and that. Obviously, standing on the highest peak in the world was a 9-year-long dream, and when I was up there, those 15-20 minutes, nobody can take it away from me. But the best moment personally I would like to share when I was exiting the gate of Mumbai airport. When I came back, just from the gate with my trolley in my hand, I saw those 3 to 4 faces that I wanted to see, that I was praying so hard to the universe that if you are listening to me, just give me 30 seconds with them at 28,000 feet. Somewhere the universe listened to me and gave me much longer than 30 seconds, and those 3 to 4 faces were in front of me. And by God, this was the most amazing moment, not of the whole expedition but of my whole life. And I just stood there and I thought to myself, this is like a bonus life, a rebirth in some ways, and you don't waste bonus life, you don't waste bonus of anything. So while I was walking towards them, I promised myself that the only and only Everest that is gonna matter to me is to live my life in the best possible way and to not waste this bonus. So yes, this was my journey to the top of the world and back. Thank you so much. Thank you.